right, today we're going to do lesson 3-4, that's find and use slopes of line. The big question here, how do you find the slope of a line given the coordinates of 2 points on the line? This really should be a review for you. You found slopes in Algebra 1, so this definitely should be a review. So slope, the slope of a non-vertical line is the ratio of the vertical change. Oh, I had my pen here. The slope of the vertical change, the rise, my pen isn't working. The vertical change, the rise, to the horizontal change, the run, between any 2 points on the line. So remember, rise over run. So slope of lines in the coordinate plane, we've got a few different types of slopes here. So a negative slope, it falls from the left to the right, like line J. So line J right here, that has a negative slope. A positive slope rises from the left to right, like line K. So right here, this K has a positive slope because it's going up. An undefined slope is when we have a vertical line, like line N. So line N right here, this right here would have an undefined slope. And then a slope of 0 is when we have a horizontal line, such as line L. So line L right here, that would have a slope of 0. Example 1, find the slopes of lines in a coordinate plane. So we're going to find the slope of line A and line C. So here's a reminder, my slope is the rise over run. You also should have seen this, the change in the y's, y2 minus y1 over the change in the x's, x2 minus x1. So let's first do line A. And my 2 points on line A is right here. My 2 points are 4, 6 and 0, 2. So I'm going to use 4, 6 and 0, 2. So I'm going to start by drawing my fraction bar and my minus signs. And the way I do slope is I say a point, I put the x in the bottom and the y right above it. So 4, 6, and then 0, 2. And then we just reduce straight across. 6 minus 2 is 4 over 4 minus 0 is 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So line A has a slope equal to 1. Line C, let's look at what points we've got. So our 2 points for line C. Line C is right here. So I've got 4, 6 and 0, 6. So 4, 6 and 0, 6. So again, I'm going to draw my fraction bar and my minus signs. I start with that every time. I'm going to say the point, 4, 6. I'm going to write the 4 in the bottom and the 6 right above it. I'll say the other point, 0, 6. 0 goes in the bottom, 6 goes right above it. 6 minus 6 is 0 over 4 minus 0 is 4. 0 divided by 4, let's think about that. If I have 0 things, can I split them into 4 piles? Well, yeah, there'd still just be 0 in each. So 0 divided by 4 is 0. So my slope of line C is 0. Try this extra example on your own. Do the slope of line B and line D, and then pause the video. Okay, welcome back. For line B, you should have had the slope of -1, and for line D, you should have had a slope of 6 over 0, which is undefined. So the answer here is -1, the answer here is undefined. Slopes of parallel lines postulate. In a coordinate plane, 2 non-vertical lines are parallel if and only if they have the same slope. So if they have the same slope, they're parallel. If they're parallel, they have the same slopes. And also, any 2 vertical lines we know are parallel. The slopes of perpendicular lines postulate tells us in a coordinate plane, two non-vertical lines are perpendicular if and only if the product of their slopes is -1. So a couple things here to remember. My first slope times my second slope has to be -1 in order for it to be perpendicular, in order for my two lines to be perpendicular. And also, horizontal lines are going to be perpendicular to vertical lines. And if the product of the two numbers, when I multiply them together, I get -1, then the numbers are what we call negative reciprocals. Negative reciprocals, and you're going to want to put a note by this, means they have the opposite signs. Opposite signs, and then the fraction is flipped. So an example of this, if I had one slope that was, let's say, 3, my negative reciprocal would have the opposite sign, so it would be negative. And I could put this 3 over 1, so if I flip that, I'd get 1 over 3. So 3 and -1/3 are negative reciprocals. Another one like this, if I had a slope of -2/5, well, the opposite sign would be positive and the reciprocal is 5/2. So these would be negative reciprocals as well. If you had a line with a slope of -2/5 and another line with a slope of positive 5/2, you would know that those two lines are perpendicular to each other. Just like if you had a line with a slope of 3 and another line with a slope of -1/3, you would know that those two lines are also perpendicular to each other. And if you multiply these together, you would get -1. So example 2, identify parallel lines. So we're going to find the slope of each line, and we're going to tell which of these lines are parallel. So to find the slope of K1, I want to find my M. I'm also going to find the slope of K2. And for K3, I'm also going to find that slope. In order to do this, I have to know 2 points on each line. So for K1, I'm going to use the points -3, -1, and -4, -6, because those are 2 points on line K1. I'm going to draw my fraction bar and my minus signs. I'm going to say my point, put X in the bottom and Y above it. So -3, -1. My other point is -4, -6. Simplifying straight across, when I have minus a negative, that becomes plus a positive. So -1 plus 6 is 5. -3 minus a -4. Well, minus a negative becomes plus a positive. So -3 plus 4 is 1. 5 divided by 1 is 5. So my slope of K1 is 5. My slope of K2, my 2 points for this one are 2, 2. And let's see where the other one is, 1, -4. So I'm going to find my slope down here. I'm going to draw my fraction bar and my minus signs. I'm going to say each point, 2, 2, so 2 goes on the bottom and the other 2 goes right above it. 1, -4, so 1 goes on the bottom and the -4 goes above it. When I simplify these, 2 minus a -4, well, that becomes plus a positive. So 2 plus 4 is 6. 2 minus 1 is 1. So 6 divided by 1 is just 6. Let's go back. Let me make sure I did that right. I got 2, 2, and 1, -4. So 2, 2, 1, -4. 2 plus 4 is 6. 2 minus 1 is 1. 6 divided by 1 equals 6. K3, my 2 points here are 4, 2. and 3, negative 3. So I'm going to draw my fraction bar and my minus signs again. 4 goes in the bottom and 2 will go right above it. 3 will go in the bottom here and negative 3 right above it. Simplifying across now. Minus a negative becomes plus a positive. 2 plus 3 is 5.
Could you please call the switchboard? Thank you.
4 minus 3 is 1. 5 divided by 1 is just 5. So my slope here is 5. My slope for K2 was 6. So in order to be parallel, they have to have the same slopes. So we can say K1 is parallel to K3 because they both have a slope of 5. Try example 2 on your own. Pause the video, and then after you're done, come back and check it. Welcome back. You should have done this example. You should have found a slope of 3 and another slope of negative 3, so they are not parallel. And make sure you've got the work shown for this one. Again, one has a slope of 3 and one has a slope of negative 3. So make sure you fill in the formula and have solved this one. Example 3. Draw a perpendicular line.
Could you please call the switchboard at 42100? Thank you.
So line H passes through 1, negative 2, and 5, 6. So I've got line H drawn right here. Graph the line perpendicular to H that passes through the point 2, 5. So the point 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I want a point that goes through 2, 5, but it's got to be perpendicular to this one. So I've got a few steps that I like to do to solve these problems. Whenever I'm writing an equation for a line or graphing a line, I need to know the equation for that. First of all, I need to find my slope. I need to find the slope of my new line first. Well, if they're perpendicular, I know my new line is going to have the opposite reciprocal slope of the line that's already on here. So let's find the slope of this line. So I'm going to draw my fraction bar and my minus signs. I've got the point 1, negative 2, so I'll put 1 and negative 2 above it. I've got the point 5, 6 here, so I'll put 5 and then 6 above it. Negative 2 minus 6 is negative 8 over 1 minus 5 is negative 4. A negative over negative, those cancel out, becomes a positive. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So that's the slope of the line given, but I need a perpendicular slope. So my slope given is 2. The opposite reciprocal, well, it's going to have the opposite sign, so opposite of a positive 2 would be negative. If I make this 2 over 1, because I can always put a whole number over 1, and flip it, I get a slope of negative 1/2. So I found my slope. I have a point that my line's going to go through, so I can use this point and do rise over run to find more points on my graph. So I'm going to rise of negative 1, so I'm going to go down 1 and run 2, and here's another point on my graph. I can do that again. Rise of negative 1, so go down 1 and run 2, and here's another point on my graph. So my line is going to look just like this. So I found my slope, and then I graphed my line. Let's do this extra example together here. We have a line that passes through 1, 6, and 8, 4, and another line that passes through 0, 5, and 2, 12. The question says, is n perpendicular to m, and explain. So you've got to think, okay, perpendicular means their slopes are opposite reciprocals. Well, I've got to know what my slopes are in order to compare them. So my slope of my slope of n, Let's find that. I'm going to draw my fraction bar and my minus sign. My 2 points for n are 1, 6 and 8, 4. So we'll plug them into our slope formula. 1 goes on the bottom, 6 goes right above it. My other point is 8, so 8 goes on the bottom, 4 goes right above it. 6 minus 4 is 2 over 1 minus 8 is negative 7. So my slope of line M is negative 2/7. Let's now find the slope of M. My 2 points are 0, 5 and 2, 12. So I'm going to draw my fraction bar and my minus signs. I'll say my point again, 0, 5, so 0 goes on the bottom, 5 goes above it. My other point is 2, 12, so 2 goes on the bottom, 12 goes right above it. Now let's reduce. 5 minus 12 is negative 7. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. A negative over a negative becomes a positive, so my slope here is 7/2. So I have one slope that's negative 2/7 and one that's 7/2. Well, they have the opposite sign. They are reciprocals. Let's test them to make sure when I multiply them, I get a negative 1. Negative times positive is a negative. 2 times 7 is 14 over 7 times 2 is 14. So I've got negative 14 over 14 is 1. So they are opposite reciprocals. They multiply to give you negative 1. So the question is n perpendicular to M and explain. We can say yes. The slopes are opposite reciprocals and their product is negative 1. And that's a nice thorough answer for that question. Example 4. Let's look at example 4 here. It says a trucker made 3 deliveries. The graph shows the trucker's distance to the destination from the starting time to the arrival time for each delivery. Use slopes to make a statement about the deliveries. So what we need to do is go through and find the slopes of each of these. So we need to find the slope for A, the slope for B, and the slope for C. Now in order to find the slope, again, we need 2 points. So A has a point here and a point here. So A has got the point 0, 150, and it's also got the point 3, 0. So if I use my slope formula, fraction bar minus signs, I'm going to plug 0, 150 in, and then 3, 0 in. 150 minus 0 is 150. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. 150 divided by negative 3 is negative 50. And if we look at our units here, we've got miles and hours, so our unit is miles per hour. So negative 50 miles per hour. For B, one of my points is 0, 250. That's right up here. My other point for B is down here. That's 3, 0. So if I plug those in, here's my fraction bar and my minus signs. I'm going to plug 0 in the bottom, 250 above it. 3, 0, so 3 goes in the bottom, 0 goes above it. 250 minus 0 is 250. Over 0 minus 3 is negative 3. 250 divided by negative 3 is negative 83 1/3. And we're still using this, so we're going to do miles per hour. C, let's use our 2 points. So for C, my first point is 250 or 0, 250. And my other point right here is 5, 0. Got 0, 250 and 5, 0. So let's draw our fraction bar and our minus signs. So I've got 0, 250. The other point is 5, 0. 250 minus 0 is 250. Over 0 minus 5 is negative 5. Reducing this, you get negative 50, and that's miles per hour. Now let's make a statement about these. Well, if we think about it, this is a real life situation. When we're talking about how fast we're going, we don't talk about positives or negatives, so we're going to ignore those signs and just comparing these. Isn't 83 1/3 miles per hour faster than the other two? So we could say that truck B was going the fastest. And that's a statement that we can make about this problem. The other question, which delivery included the fastest rate of travel? Well, we just answered that. It was truck B. Another statement that we could have made is we could have said trucks A and C are traveling at the same rate of speed because they're both going about 50 miles per hour. So that's another statement that we could have made with this problem. So that's all for these notes. Hopefully you got a really great review of slope. It should have looked familiar from before because you have done slope before. So have a good night.